Developed and published by Atlus in 2006, originally for the Sony PlayStation 2 was that of Persona 3. The Persona franchise was originally a spin-off of the Shin Megami Tensei franchise. Persona 3 was the first of the Persona games that became its own individual franchise for Atlus, on a game reacted to and respected in its own right, separate from anything that the Persona spin-off franchises were affiliated with in terms of previous games, being that of Persona 1 and Persona 2. Persona 3 was so successful at reimagining the franchise for Atlus, a director's cut of the game being that of Persona 3 FES was released. However, the ending of the game was somewhat ambiguous, and partly for that reason as well, including remaining unused ideas that were used in the production of FES, added depth to the game. Another side version of Persona 3 was that of Persona 3 Portable, released for the PlayStation Portable in 2009. From Persona 1 through Persona 5 in the franchise's 25-year history of the time, there have been many final bosses for players to fight against and conclude the game's experience for, but it's been said that the boss of Persona 3, being that of the Nyx Avatar, was perhaps the most depressing or even disturbing fight within the Persona lore or stories for any of the Persona games during that time. The circumstances for Persona 3 being that it was the first modern Persona game, and had plenty of details within that game which brought about the concept of the final boss Nyx in the series. And it could be argued that the boss's themes or even premise hasn't been done since, or possibly wouldn't ever be done again in that particular way. Even in terms of visual designs for the final boss is somewhat different when compared to later depictions of final bosses for Persona games. The Nyx represented the hopelessness of the premise within Persona 3's story, on the ultimate realization that it was truly the end within the game's lore, and that nothing could be done to stop Nyx's arrival. Due to the plot on story Persona 3, Nyx was actually the form of in-game characters Pharos, Thanatos, and Ryoji Mochizuki. Through the course of the game, the player learns the details that all three of these characters are interconnected and realizes that they're essentially the same person, being that of Ryoji. As Nyx is the impression of all these characters, or memories that the player experienced during the game, the culmination of all the experiences or choices that the player made in terms of Pharos, Thanatos, or Ryoji. That the final boss of Persona 3 was someone that they had known, that most other characters had experienced and dealt with in the game, and that through no fault of his own is forced into the situation of fighting against his friends. Owing to the death of Persona Portable, the situation could be even further brought in depth, as the female lead protagonist can be possibly romantically intimate with Ryoji and learn even more details about him as to how he felt so utterly helpless about the entire situation with Nyx. The game actually gives the player the choice of having to possibly kill Ryoji by him begging the protagonist to kill him, but from the story's point of view, in the game Nyx can't be killed, as everyone later discovers after defeating it. The premise of Ryoji asking for his death was seen as an act of mercy, as killing Ryoji would mean that everyone's memories of what had happened would be erased, and everyone would be allowed to live and die in ignorance when the unstoppable coming of Nyx comes to destroy the world and every soul upon it. Persona 3 helped to bring about the modern personalization of the franchise, and as a result of the player's actions and choices during the game, as well as viewing the transformation of Ryoji into Nyx, was a clear defining moment of the consequences or choices that the player did throughout the game. The situations in Persona 4 and 5 were also similar, but the direct consequences of what occurred in Persona 3 made it all the more personal, which is why among discussions or theorists, the concept is that the final boss of Nyx was all the more memorable. Sometimes a character can be forgotten because it was the first modern final boss depiction for a video game franchise, and according to some accounts, nothing quite like it will ever be done again.